Beneath the mist-shrouded peaks of the Appalachian Mountains, darkness holds a memory in every hollow and whisper under every tree. For generations, travelers and truckers alike have vanished into these woods, leaving behind only shattered radios, muddy footprints, and breathless tales passed from one sleepless night to the next. Tonight, you're not just listening. A part of you is already there, headlights cutting through fog, thick as secrets. Are you brave enough to discover what flickers between the pines? Or will your name become just another story, echoing in the mountains? The ghosts of Appalachia are waiting, and they remember. Story number 1. The Mist Lady of Blue Hollow. The Appalachian dawn was smothered in dense fog, velvet thick, softening every edge of the forest as Jonah and his hiking partner, Angela, two seasoned hikers with a shared passion for Appalachian lore, slowly navigated the treacherous, narrow, ridge trail near Blue Hollow. Their boots softly crunched on wet leaves and scattered pine needles, every step muffled by the blanket of mist. Angela kept scanning the dense woods, quietly sharing stories she'd heard from local staleys of spirits that lived in the mists, waiting for dawn. The world shrunk to the beams of their headlamps, each footfall seeming louder in the unnatural. Hush that settled over the land, locals warned. Before sunrise, outsiders had best steer clear. The air pressed heavily against their chests, thick and cool, holding every sound and whisper in place. The scent of damp earth was sharpened by a lingering chill, a dampness that left shirts clinging to their backs and raised goosebumps along their arms. As they curved near the cliff's edge, the silence deepened. The usual chorus of birds fell away, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath in the swirling white. A shape began to form. A woman, motionless, draped in what looked disturbingly like a bridal gown, the delicate lace shimmering with fine droplets of dew. She stood apart from the land, her presence both ethereal and undeniably real. Her back was turned, shoulders hunched, as if the world itself had grown too heavy. Jonah hesitated, then called out, his voice breaking the silence and echoing into the fog. The sound vanished almost immediately, absorbed and smothered by the mist, as if responding to his voice. The woman slowly turned just enough for them to see her face, impossibly pale, with hollows beneath eyes that seemed rimmed with centuries of sorrow. Her lips parted as if she meant to speak, but not a single sound reached their ears. Instead, an icy wave swept over the pair, making Angela shudder and grip Jonah's arm tightly. The woman raised a hand, beckoning with slow, deliberate motion, before gliding soundlessly deeper toward the precipice. Her movements felt both hypnotic and unnatural. Each time Jonah, driven by equal parts curiosity and concern, took a step forward. She retreated always just out of reach, her form shimmering in and out of focus, solid only where the fog was thickest. Suddenly, all ambient noise disappeared. Their own breathing seemed to drop away, and the cloud of mist pressed closer. Jonah could barely hear the crunch of dirt beneath his feet, nor the tremble in Angela's voice urging him, shaking now, to turn back before the world lost shape entirely. Yet he pressed on, his nerves on edge, guided by something between fear and fascination at the very edge. Mere seconds before the first streak of sunlight sliced over the ridgeline, the Mist Lady froze. She turned to face them, to final beat size, shining with a mix of warning and profound loss. For a breathless moment, Jonah felt as if she was pleading with him, not with words but with a silent, desperate gaze. Then, as the pale dawn started to rise, her shape unraveled, dissolving into silver vapor, as if the fog itself was reclaiming what belonged to it. The sudden absence left an aching hollowness inside both hikers, and a chill so cold it seemed to reach their bones. With the sun peeking over the mountains, the mist evaporated fast. The ground where she stood was empty, no footprints, no tear in the grass, just that lingering frigidity and a sense of emptiness that haunted Jonah for years. The forest birds began to sing once again, as if the world had been reset. Nobody in Blue Hollow truly knows who the Mist Lady is, though the oldest residents will tell you in hushed voices of a tragic bride who disappeared on her wedding day. Her heartbreak so powerful it seeped into the ridges and valleys, never to leave. They say she wanders still, lost in her pain, woven into folklore and warning. Hikers who seek her sometimes stagger back down from Blue Hollow, dazed, forever changed, or never speaking of what they witnessed. Others simply added to the long list of those gone missing in the fog, and so the legend weaves its way through every whispered tale, painted in morning mist and late-night shadows. They say if you ever glimpse the mist lady at dawn, don't follow, and don't speak her name aloud. Leave an offering, flowers, a ribbon, even a stone, or simply turn away, because those who chase her may join her in the fog, becoming just another secret the mountains will never yield. The story endures, passed along by truckers, hikers, locals. Every retelling warns. The ghosts of Appalachia remember, especially those who are foolish or brave enough to search for answers in the mist. Story number 2. Spectre at Devil's Backbone Tunnel. The Devil's Backbone Tunnel winds through one of the oldest and most mysterious stretches of the Appalachian Mountains, a place where legends seem to take root as easily as wildflowers, and every curve in the road hides a secret. For decades, truckers whispered tales about this narrow, stone-lipped corridor. Engines stalling, radios sizzling out, lights dying. The mountain, they said, had a mind of its own. Mark, a seasoned hauler known for both his nerves and skepticism, had scoffed at such stories most of his career. But on this particular night, as the clock slid toward 2 a.m., a restless anxiety buzzed beneath his skin. The air outside was damp and icy, and the fog rolled over the ridges in thick, silent waves. He had just picked up a refrigerated load in Bristol and was headed north, following the black ribbon of highway as it narrowed toward the infamous tunnel. Ancient pine trees crowded the road, dipping low as if listening to the low-gear grind of his rig. The CB radio, usually alive with chatter from other drivers, began to crackle and then slipped into a hissing silence. Mark tapped the mic, checked the power, but only static and a faint mechanical whine replied. The approach to the tunnel was lined with peeling yellow signs. Use headlights. No stopping. And, most unsettling, report all strange occurrences to service station. Mark chuckled to himself. He didn't believe in ghosts. He did, however, believe in brake checks and clear sight lines. So he slowed as he crossed the tunnel's threshold. Inside, the world shrank. Ancient stone walls pressed close on either side, shiny with moisture. The air smelled of wet earth, rust, and something older. His headlights, normally bold spears, were swallowed instantly by the darkness. In his mirrors, only an endless black. Mark eased forward. Suddenly, every light in the cab flickered and died. The dash went dark, radio dead, instrument panel gone all at once. The engine stuttered, but didn't stall. He was moving through pure, complete blackness. The only sounds his own careful breathing and the slow grind of tires on rough stone. That's when he saw her, a flicker at first, like a reflection, then slowly resolving into the shape of a woman crouched in the farthest tunnel alcove. Her dress hung in muddy, tattered sheets, seams trailing along the slick floor. Her hair fell in heavy ropes to the side, hiding her face. Mark's blood ran cold. Still, he found himself rolling the window down, voice trembling. "Hey, are you all right?" No response. A chill, colder than the outside air, bled into the cab. A low, mournful hum began to vibrate from the speakers, synchronized with the soft, rhythmic drip of water from overhead. The woman's head moved, not turning, but angling up as if listening to something Mark couldn't hear. He couldn't see her eyes, but he felt them. Heavy, ancient, and utterly hopeless. She slowly, impossibly, began to rise, almost floating as she glided along the tunnel wall. Mark tried to back up foot, jamming the brake, but his truck coasted forward, obeying some force other than his own will. Suddenly, every old radio in the cab spat static and fragments of song. Dizzy, Mark heard bits of gospel, country laments, a child's lullaby, all overlaid, tangled, then torn away as a cold wind swept through the tunnel. A moment later, the windshield glazed over with frost, splintering into a wild pattern of lines that pulsed with blue light. The temperature in the cab dropped sharply. His breath fogged, curling before him in the beam of a headlamp that no longer worked. The woman locked eyes with Mark, a meeting of past and present, grief and warning. She opened her mouth as if to scream, but no sound came. Instead, a thunderous Bang ripped through the tunnel. The instruments blinked back to life, their illumination harsh and blinding. The figure was gone. With shaking hands, Mark drove out of the tunnel and didn't stop until the lights of a remote truck stop pierced the darkness, welcoming him back to the world of the living. He told no one at first, afraid of ridicule or disbelief. But the next week, another driver recounted a nearly identical experience. Lost power, bitter cold, the woman by the wall. A small group began to swap stories over cheap coffee and flickering neon lights. They pieced together the fragments, some insisting she was a railroad widow, others claiming she was the embodiment of all who'd perished building the tunnel, searching endlessly for the way out. Some drivers claimed to see reminders for days. After, frost lingering on mirrors, a woman's face half reflected in their windows, radios tuning to static on the anniversary of an old disaster. A few tried to find her story in the archives, but the records were vague. Incomplete, just enough to keep the legend going. Now, every time Mark approaches the mouth of Devil's Backbone Tunnel, he turns the radio off, flips on the brights, and mutters a quiet wish for both of them, the living and the lost. Because in that shadow-choked pass, the boundary between worlds is razor thin. And sometimes, what's waiting on the other side is just a grief that's never let go. Story number 3. The Weeping Child of Pine Ridge. There's a stretch of Pine Ridge, a shadowy horseshoe bend, deep in the Appalachian foothills where even the most seasoned hikers walk faster as twilight falls. To outsiders, it's a scenic, forgotten trail among thick pines and mossed-over stones. To locals, it's the place where, some nights, you hear the cries of a lost child, echoing through the trees long after sunset. It was late October when Mia and her younger brother Logan set out on the Pine Ridge Trail. The leaves had already turned, copper and red carpeting the forest floor in a thick hush. Mia, home from college and craving the wild, wanted some last adventure before winter closed in. Logan grumbled about the chill, sticking close as the trail snaked along the broad spine of the ridge. Dusk gathered quickly. Their laughter faded as the path narrowed and the trees pressed in. A hush settled in, a feeling Mia would later describe as if the woods were waiting for something. Their footfalls softened into silence. In the growing dark, they heard it, a thin, wavering wail from somewhere up ahead. It was unmistakably a child's cry, sharp, frightened sobs, coming from behind a tangle of fallen branches. Mia hesitated, heart beating hard. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Logan's face was pale. He nodded. They called out, "Hello, do you need help?" But the only answer was another burst of crying, this time deeper in the woods. Desperate to help, and truthfully, scared to do nothing, Mia guided Logan in the direction of the voice. The pines grew twisted here. Visibility shrank, and their cell phones offered little light. Suddenly, on a patch of damp earth beside a half-rotted log, Mia found footprints, small, bare toes dug in, as if bracing to run. The prints led off the trail, deeper into the wildest part of the ridge. Mia paused. "This isn't right," she said. They debated turn back or follow, but the crying was louder now, echoing just out of sight, like a lure on a cruel hook. Against their better judgment, they pressed on. The prints multiplied, swirling in circles, crossing and recrossing, some fresh, some fading into mud. Mia then noticed something. For every set of prints that led deeper toward the crying, none seemed to double back. No tracks returned to the trail. The forest felt wrong, temperature dropping, shadows gathering thick. Mia sensed it, a coldness pressing in, the kind you feel in your teeth. Logan shivered, clutching her arm. Then, abruptly, the crying stopped. The world turned silent, as if every living thing in the woods were listening. Mia called out again, her own voice shaky now. Logan's flashlight caught something between the pines, a shape, low and pale, crouched in the leaves. For a flash of a second, it looked like a small child, tangled hair, head in her arms, shoulders shaking. Mia stepped forward, whispering softly, "It's okay, we're here to help." But before she could move closer, the child's head snapped up. Her eyes were wide and black, reflecting no light. Her mouth hung open in a voiceless scream, no sound. Just sheer terror sculpted into her face. All at once, the temperature plunged. Frost crackled across the fallen leaves. The child bolted, running on all fours far faster than any kid could, vanishing through the tree line as if sucked into the forest itself. Mia and Logan stumbled back to the trail, chased by the sound of branches snapping behind them, unseen but close. The moment they found the main path, warmth rushed back, and the cries began again far behind them now. But unmistakable. Running, breathless, they didn't stop until the trail emptied onto the gravel road near their car. Only then did they dare look back. Errant whimpers faded on the wind. Later, at the local diner, an old woman heard their story and shook her head. "It's the Pine Ridge child," she said. "Legend says she lost her brother out there 100 years ago. Some people say she's still searching, and anyone who answers her call never makes it out the same." For weeks, Mia dreamed of mud and cold, of black-eyed children calling from the dark. And when autumn returns and the wind whips through Pine Ridge, sometimes hikers find fresh, tiny footprints, hear a voice that's part human, part echo, lost forever in the Appalachian shade. This version uses cinematic pacing, immersive, sensory detail, and a viral story structure to maximize tension and emotional resonance. Story number 4. The Glowing Miner of Lost Creek. Lost Creek, tucked deep within the folds of the remote Appalachians, was a place most folks erased from their maps. Its coal mines had collapsed decades ago, the few remaining homes left to rot beneath choking vines and the slow march of moss. Crows circled, and no birds sang there after dusk the mountains. It was said, held on to their secrets, and never forgave a trespass. Eddie had never believed in ghost stories. 2 decades hauling timber and heavy equipment across lonely country had taught him to expect bad roads, not restless spirits. But on a bitter November night, the sky dim and beginning to snow, he found himself running late down the one-lane track that skirted the ruins of Lost Creek. The only light was his own, swallowing up the dark and the swirling mist curling from the hollow. The CB radio hadn't buzzed in miles. With every inch past the old mine entrance, the air felt heavier, colder condensation icing on the inside of his windshield despite the engine heat. All at once, the forest on either side went deathly quiet. The truck's headlights flickered, and then he saw it. A pale blue glow flickered between the stunted trees, too steady and cold for a flashlight, far too old for modern lanterns. It bobbed slowly beside the crumbled shaft entrance, illuminating the twisted wood and collapsed timbers. Shadows warped and shifted as the light moved, revealing the dark outline of a man in battered overalls, helmet perched askew and lamp burning with spectral luminescence. Dust and soot clung to his skin. His eyes burned with the longing of someone too long left behind. Eddie eased his truck to a crawl, the crunch of gravel unnaturally loud. The blue light pulsed brighter, casting an unearthly pallor across the ruined earth. Suddenly, his cab filled with the faintest melody of sorrowful old mining ballad, crackling through the static on the dead radio. The temperature plummeted. Goosebumps traced Eddie's arms. The miner's figure lifted an arm, not threatening, but warning. His lips moved, but the only sound was the melody of men who'd never made it out. As Eddie watched, still and transfixed, a sharp snap echoed in the frozen air. The road ahead buckled and slumped. A shallow sinkhole opened, tearing the earth where, moments before, he would have driven blindly forward. With a jolt of terror, Eddie slammed the brakes, watching in disbelief as dirt and gravel vanished into the shaft below. The blue glow flickered, illuminating the edge of the chasm, the miner's face grim and mournful. Then, like breath on a winter window, the apparition faded light first. Then figure leaving only darkness and the smell of damp earth in his wake. Catching his breath, Eddie stared long into the trees, swallowing his fear. A moment later, the radio crackled back to life, the ballad gone, replaced by normal blips of static. He forced himself to drive on, avoiding the fresh scar in the road. As Lost Creek faded in the rear view, the forest slowly exhaled, and the sounds of life resumed. 2 nights later, over midnight coffee at a truck stop, Eddie shared his tale with a cluster of long-haul drivers. His voice was quiet, his hands unsteady. Older faces at the table nodded in understanding. One man, grizzled and pale, whispered, "That was Tobias Crane's light, Old friend. Warned my uncle back in '68, saved him too. New stories emerged drivers, recalling times they'd seen the blue glow before landslides. Miners lost in their day whose names were now echoes. Wives whose lanterns never returned. Each tale circled back to the same warning. If you see the lantern, do not run. Do not follow it. Pay your respects, heed the warning, and thank the lucky star. You can still turn around after that night. Eddie refused jobs that passed Lost Creek. After sunset, his friends ribbed him at first. But when the ground shifted and a big rig went missing weeks later, after someone ignored the blue light no one laughed. Truckers started leaving pennies and wildflowers at the old track. Little offerings of thanks to whatever lingered. But on cold, clear nights, the forgotten road through Lost Creek still glows blue. Some say the miner is still there, trudging through the darkness, forever bound to the ruins, sometimes saving, sometimes just searching for peace. The legend endures. Not all the ghosts of Appalachia seek to harm the living. Some bear the weight of history, and a warning for anyone wise enough to see. In these mountains, the past never sleeps. And for those who listen, the songs of old, miners carried on that unearthly light might just keep you safe until dawn. Story number 5. The Phantom Hitchhiker of Black Snake Road. There are places in the Appalachians where the rules of night driving change where fog hugs the asphalt like cold breath, and each curve hides stories the locals only whisper at dawn. One such stretch is Black Snake Road, a winding rain-slicked pass lined by old trees and forgotten mile markers. Truckers have a rule here. Never stop if you see someone on the roadside after dark. Eleanor, a seasoned long-haul driver with a reputation for never spooking, had delivered a load deep into the mountains one sodden Thursday night. Her rigs wipers kept time with the static on her CB radio, headlights spearing the gloom as they reflected off sheets of relentless Appalachian rain as midnight drew near. Eleanor rounded a notorious hairpin. Her headlights cut through a fresh swirl of mist, and there, on the gravel shoulder, stood a young woman. She wore a faded orange safety vest over a pale dress, her dark hair plastered against her face, one arm raised in a tired, pleading wave. Eleanor slowed instinctively, recalling 100 stories of hitchhikers gone wrong. Still, something about the girl, thin, shivering, soaked overrode her sense of superstition. Eleanor stopped a few feet ahead, engine idling, windows instantly fogging. Up. She unlocked the passenger door, calling, "You all right?" The young woman slipped into the cab without a word, skin icy, damp hair leaving a cold spot on the seat. She sat stiffly, hands clasped, eyes locked on the road ahead. Eleanor tried to make small talk as they wound through the dripping black. The girl never responded, only nodded slightly, her face unreadable in the dashboard glow. A faint floral scent lilac seemed to fill the cab, growing stronger with every passing mile. The CB radio sputtered around them, voices garbled, sometimes echoing fragments of Eleanor's own questions. The miles crept by in uneasy silence until, just before the next junction, the girl stirred. "Here's fine," she whispered, her voice a thread of sound. She pointed to an unmarked turnout. Little more than a muddy rut vanishing into the woods. Eleanor pulled over, conscience warring with logic. "You sure there's nothing out here?" But the girl had already slipped out. Eleanor peered after her, watching the vest's orange stripes blur in the rain, then vanish entirely into fog. Seconds later, when Eleanor checked again, not a soul remained. A brief, unnatural cold clung to the cab. The lilac scent hung like mist. Shaken, Eleanor continued. At the next truck stop, she found herself recounting the encounter to a cluster of drivers and waitstaff. Their faces darkened. "You picked her up," an older driver muttered, knuckles whitening on his mug. "Ain't the first time, but you're lucky. They say if she asks for a second ride, you don't ever make it to the next town," he explained. The legend, decades before, a young woman in orange vanished on Black Snake while walking home on a rainy night. Some claim she was the victim of a hit-and run. The case remains unsolved. Her roadside plea doomed to loop forever. Other drivers told their own versions. Some remembered the overwhelming chills. Others the ghostly floral scent, and a few described finding faded footprints on their cab steps after. One trucker swore he let her off, only to see her again in his headlights miles down the road. The lore is clear now. If you see a hitchhiker in orange on that mountain pass, don't stop. But, if you do, don't let her in twice. And if you catch the scent of lilacs with no flowers for miles, drive on fast, to this day. Some Appalachian truckers leave ribbons or pennies at random mile markers along Black Snake Road, hoping to appease whatever still wanders its rain-slicked curves. And on stormy nights, when the fog closes in, drivers who know the legend keep a nervous eye on their mirrors, never certain if the next curve or flashing vests will be their last.